Rhinestone Grape earrings. These are very large. They measure about 5.5 inches long by 2.5 inches wide. To make these earrings, you will need two 18mm purple stones with settings, 28mm fuchsia stones with settings, two ear clips, four 8mm jump rings, two connectors, and all of these settings are silver plated, four 27 by 13 green zircon stones with settings, 20 16mm purple stones with settings, six 16mm fuchsia stones with settings. All of these settings are silver plated. Matter of fact, all of the findings are silver plated. I will be using a heat gun and 300-degree solder wire. I've already laid out my stones and settings, so I'm going to go ahead and start soldering those. It takes about 30 seconds for the metal to heat up. Once it's heated, it goes fairly fast. You're just going to move the heat away slightly. The heat is pretty much concentrated in one area, so you don't have to move it very far. And then you're just going to dab the solder in between the two settings and then apply the heat again, move it away, dab between the two settings, and just keep going. You want to try and get as many connections as you can. You want to have the settings as close as possible. I'm adding a little bit of Play-Doh in between the two leaves, and this is just going to be to brace the jump ring while I solder it in place. The jump ring is going to be soldered to each of the Navettes or leaves. I'm just going to heat up the area and solder both sides of the jump ring just basically like I did the settings. Now that this piece is cooled, I'm going to show you how to duplicate it. Just turn the Play-Doh over. You can use the other side. If I wanted it to be exactly the same, then I would just push it back down into the clay. But what I want actually is the reverse of it. By using the back side, I will be getting a mirror image of the original piece, and I will have all my stone placements set for me. So I just start placing the stones in the little indentions. The only thing you have to watch on this is the color of the stones. You want to make sure you have them in the right spot. Your color placement will actually be visually the same as the piece that you're looking at, because when you flip it over, it is going to be the reverse of the piece that is finished. In other words, with the original piece face up, the fuchsia stones are on the right hand side. With the piece that I'm doing face down, the piece that I'm working on now, the fuchsia stones will also be on the right hand side. When I turn it over, they will be on the left hand side, giving me a mirror image. I'm just checking the two pieces together to see whether or not the stones do all line up, and they appear to be in exactly the same spot as the original piece. I'm going to go ahead and start soldering this piece just like I did before. Just going to heat up the area, dab the solder in between the settings when it gets hot, move the heat away, and continue on. I'm going to use the Play-Doh to brace the jump ring just like I did in the other one, and just set the jump ring in the same place and solder it on both sides of the Navettes. I've already made the top portion of one of the earrings. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that with the other one. I'm going to lay out my Play-Doh and begin laying my stones down. Just going to set the purple stone in the center. I'm going to start framing the purple stone with the smaller fuchsia stones. The fuchsia stones are a little large to get a completely round frame, so the bottom stone is dropped down slightly. It's still touching the other stones, but it is a little bit lower than the other stones. This makes it almost a pear shape, not quite, just a really fat pear. I'm going to go ahead and start soldering this piece. I'm just going to solder it just like I did the others. You're going to solder the frame together, and you are going to also solder each one of the stones to the larger purple stone. I need to add a jump ring, so I'm just going to lay some Play-Doh down along with my jump ring and solder the jump ring to the very bottom fuchsia stone. I need to add an ear clip, so I'm just putting a little bit of solder on the back of the setting, and I'm going to run it down to the jump ring. Be using a third hand to hold the clip in place, and I tend to use the third hand as well as my pliers to keep them close together. So I'll be using the heat gun to apply heat. Basically, the third hand just stabilizes for me, and I use the pliers to add a little pressure just to keep them close. While you're heating the solder with the air clip, you should see a little bit of oil or the solder start to flow. Once you see it flow, or you see that oil, you'll know that it has heated up enough and that there's a good connection. And I usually hold the pliers in place for a few seconds after I remove the heat, just to give it time to cool down and set. And I'm going to go ahead and connect these. I have a little connector, and I just hook it onto the jump ring, and you just take your pliers and you pinch it closed. These little connectors are kind of a C shape, and you just take the other end of it and put the bottom portion of the earring on there and clamp it shut as well. We now have our finished set. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.